Danger. Aircraft ahead. 11 o'clock. 1.5 miles. Same level. Reciprocal heading.
Hello and welcome to this flyer video. We've made it to go alongside a feature in the December issue, so if you haven't seen that, check the link in the description and go and download it now from issue. It's completely free of charge. So, as you know, the UKCA have recently made available a £250 grant for Electronic Conspicuity. And that's kind of spawned, apart from many purchases of Electronic Conspicuity kit, that's spawned huge debates, arguments, deep dives into technical issues. We kind of wanted to take a step back from that and to go and test the Electronic Conspicuity that was out there, the most popular kinds of it at least, and then kind of just see what it was like from a day-to-day pilot's point of view, someone who doesn't want to get deep down into the technology, someone who just wants to either turn it on if it's fitted permanently, or someone who wants to just carry it onto the airplane and put it in if you kind of change airframes or you rent or whatever. So what we did is we gathered 4 of us together and various types of EC equipment. And we did a whole bunch of flights, mainly along a railway line, keeping it on our left so we didn't hit each other, which would have been a little bit embarrassing for a flight testing Electronic Conspicuity, just to see what we could see. And then once we were happy with that, we transitioned. If you imagine the railway line was west-east, which it sort of was-ish, then the target aircraft, after flying kind of opposing orbits, would reposition and fly north-south orbits. We were obviously in radio contact and we knew what altitudes were at, and throughout we could see, or we couldn't see, depending on what we were using, really. So that's what we were doing. There are people who are completely, fundamentally bought into one particular solution. There are others who are completely and fundamentally bought into another solution. And frankly, those two groups, if you're on one of those two groups, you're going to hate the video and you're going to hate the feature, because we're looking at it from a kind of ordinary point of view without going into that deep dive. Just people who want to go flying and not run into anybody. So what did we find out? Well, there are some big takeaways and some takeaways that perhaps weren't as obvious to us, and maybe they should have been before we started. The first one is that aerial placement is absolutely critical. There were times when an aeroplane, the RV-8 for example, had an ADS-B out aerial on the bottom and a FLAM aerial out on the top of the fuselage, and we could monitor that aircraft, and as it turned you could see on the iPad, you could see the screen, you could see it blanking the ADS-B and the FLAM ID coming up, and then and vice versa. So that was really quite a fascinating discovery, and it's, you know, for those of us who put Electronic Conspicuity in around different airframes, or if we fly rental aircraft, that's a real big consideration. The placement is really important, and it's very difficult to get it right in some aircraft, bearing in mind you've got lumps of metal, lumps of pilots, lumps of engine, carbon fibre maybe, all sorts of other bits and pieces. So that bit's really quite important. The second thing is that it's really easy to get distracted and fixated on traffic on an iPad, and there you are in the airport. If you're not careful, you can get head down, looking inside, oh, he's going there and going there, and all the time missing the one that's not doing any EC. So really, the whole distracting thing, and I kind of found that out. I was reviewing some of the videos that we took of the iPad screens, and I have to say, to be honest, I'm not hugely impressed with myself over this, but I looked back at the playback videos and there were aircraft in the vicinity, not a risk, I hate to hasten to say, but there were aircraft in the vicinity that I missed during the trials. I didn't see them. I only saw them when I looked back at the iPad screen afterwards, and that's because I was fixated on the traffic that we were looking for, the people participating in the flights. So that's worth looking at. And also, I think the other thing is, traffic on a screen is great for building up a sort of overall situational awareness, but when you need to take action about traffic, you don't want to see it on the screen. You don't want to be interpreting that and making up your own mind to take action when it's getting very close. You might use it to kind of like strategically avoid certain areas if there are build up of gliders or something like that. But in terms of avoiding the traffic and avoiding action, you really don't want to be looking at the screen. Got to have an oral alert that just gets your attention. Otherwise, you're just focused heads in far too much. So I'm a big fan of oral alerts. The other thing we found, and I realised that there are at least 2 schools of thought on this, and I'm not entirely sure where I sit. Everyone who came along to help us on the day didn't like bearingless targets. They didn't like the fact that there was the kind of the ring which changes from green to amber to red. without knowing any direction for that traffic. And a lot of people had actually turned that off because they just didn't like it. Now I do know there are two arguments, and is it better to know that there's traffic close by even though you don't know where it is? Yes, maybe. Some people found it really distracting, particularly when it came to flying circuits and stuff. It was just, and again, without that kind of or warning, you're kind of reliant on finding it out, and you've got no trend to look at either, which makes it much more difficult to spot. I've written about this in the magazine, but I wanted to take a look on video of the different kind of units that are available and the different kind of units we flew with. So the first one I'm going to look at is Sky Echo. Sky Echo 2 comes in a nice box. This is Sky Echo 2, a really kind of nice, solid, well-made piece of consumer electronics. Really, it comes with a RAM mount, a little quarter turn, as you would get with probably Garmin's and a lot of other stuff that gets mounted on bikes and stuff like that. And that gets suckered to a surface in your airplane. Now, it's quite important that this is vertical, but it has an integral battery, and it has 3 lights, battery, ADS-B and GPS. You can configure this to receive ADS-B rather than transmit, or you can configure it to receive and transmit. So for example, in my airplane, which does ADS-B out through the transponder and the Garmin GTN 750, I don't want to be putting out 2 ADS-B signals, so I just use it to receive. Why do I use it to receive when I've got that kit and I've actually got ADS-B in as well? Well, because there's a secondary receiver in here which you can configure to receive FLAM traffic. You have to pay your nav provider, in my case Skydemon, 30 quid a year, which is a bargain price to get FLAM equipped traffic showing on my iPad. So all in all, pretty good. The battery, I've never had a battery run out. It's easy to power in flight. There's a USB-C socket there. The downside of this particular unit, as you can see, there are no external aerial connections. Given the importance of aerials, if you were going to use this in a permanent installation somewhere, it'd be great to have the opportunity to run your own aerials and put your aerials in an optimum position. And frankly, an optimum position is outside of the aircraft. If you can get the aerials outside the aircraft, then so much the better. So that's Sky Echo, really nice little tough unit. Get the impression you could chuck it in a flight bag and nothing's really no harm's going to come of it. Well made, solid, feels good. I like it. Sky Echo. Then we've got Pilot Aware's Rosetta. This is kind of different. It kind of the DNA of Rosetta comes from the early days when there was a Pilot Aware Classic, which in the very early days, if I remember correctly, you bought the kit and there was even soldering to do, although that didn't last very long, frankly, and the solder-free kit came along quite quickly, and now you don't have to do anything. You just buy it and you get this almost ready-to-use unit. It comes with 2 aerials, a long aerial and a short aerial, which you attach here and here. There you go. Oops. And that's it, except for reasons that I'm not entirely sure of, this doesn't have an inbuilt battery. It's actually probably maybe getting not quite twice as big as Sky Echo, but not far off twice as big as Sky Echo. But for some reason, there's no internal battery. Now, I kind of think that's a little bit of a shame, particularly as the Pilot Aware website makes it very clear that the quality of the power source, and it recommends, I think, Anchor batteries, a bit like this one here. The quality of the power source is really quite important. So given the importance of the quality of the power source, personally, I would have liked to have seen a power source included in it. What else is there to tell you about this? You turn this on by plugging it into a power source. You turn it off by pulling it out of a power source. There's no way externally of telling whether it's on or off, other than looking through the kind of little slots here to see if you can see the lights flickering inside, which you can. That's a bit of a shame as well. This one doesn't belong to me. This one's got Velcro along the back, mainly so that you can Velcro it to the battery and keep that in one piece. Now, you could get a shorter power lead, and that would keep it a little bit neater. But the other but the other consideration I would say with this is that if you are flying a rental airplane, maybe PA-28, 172, AA5, TB10, kind of the typical rental GA fleet, then this is a fairly chunky piece of kit to find a space for. So on the 182, we had it on the combing in front of us, and we were kind of moving it around to try and make sure that we got the best situation possible. And that's a kind of really tricky thing. I know some people who have these permanently installed in their aircraft with external aerials outside, and that provides really quite good signals. But when it's inside, you have to be very careful. And in some cases, as we found in our testing, there was blanking, and that is blanking either by and the same for the Sky Echo. Although the Sky Echo is a bit smaller, so maybe a little bit easier. There is blanking in terms of these aerials, both in terms of transmitting and in terms of receiving. So you do have to be a little bit careful, and it's quite spooky when you watch a piece of traffic going along, and then that traffic turns, and in the turn it disappears. So you go, whoa, where's that going now? And that's getting back to the point about being fixated again. Then we have this. The elephant in the room really is around the pilot-aware ground stations. Now, I know people who have pilot-aware ground stations, and I know people who have pilot-aware with external aerials. And the pilot-aware people with external aerials managed to pick up ground stations from a long, long way away. We flew around to try and find some ground stations. We looked at one that was north of the strip where we're based at Calm. There's one in Bath. We looked at the park, which is a gliding site. And as you can see by the videos, the ability to pick up a ground station at a distance that is useful when you're carrying this in something like a 172 or 182, or I would suggest as well PA28, AA5, etc., is really quite small. So the one just north of us, I think we picked it up the first time we picked it up, and you can tell, you get that little green symbol that you can see on screen. It was something like 1.5 kilometres. Skydemon measures in metres when it gets down to lower distances, so 1,500 metres or something like that. But let's say 2 kilometres even. 2 kilometres is not a great distance to pick something up, and not a hugely useful distance. The one in Bath was slightly better. I think I need to go and look at my notes, but something like 3 kilometres, maybe a bit more than that, 3.8 kilometres maybe even. And the one at the park was somewhere similar, 3.3 maybe. However, interestingly, the one at the park, when you approach it from the north, you kind of see the station at 3.3 or 3.2, whatever it was, nautical miles now. Sorry. And you go further south, then it holds on to the signal, and you are still receiving it 10 nautical miles south, and maybe beyond. I had to kind of turn because of some bad weather and come back at that point. So clearly, there are some variabilities, and that really is my... that for me is the elephant in the room. The ground station idea is a fantastic idea, and it builds a network of ground stations. But if you are relying on a network of volunteers to build their ground stations, run their ground stations, provide their ground stations with power, provide their ground stations with internet, provide their ground stations with the best aerial they can, provide their ground stations with a brilliant view of the sky, you're going to get a certain variability, and you're not, unless you have ground stations turned on and you're constantly looking to see whether you're picking up traffic, there's no real easy way of knowing whether you are or aren't in receipt of a ground station. I mean, I think as certainly not from a kind of normal pilot point of view, and I think it's a good idea. I just think hoping for it to provide complete seamless coverage, which is what you would want if you were looking for traffic information, is a big ask, and something that's not currently been achieved. So what's the conclusion? Well, I suppose my conclusion is that any electronic conspicuity is better than no electronic conspicuity, but the best thing to do, and the first thing I would advise people to spend their £250 grant on, is a way of providing ADS-B out from their airplane. Now, if you can do that via your transponder or via an approved source, then go and read the feature for the explanation about SIL1 and SDA. It's important, but I won't go into it here because it's explained in the feature. If you can do it via an approved source, like Triggs TN72 or something, onto your transponder, then that is absolutely the best solution. Do that first. If you can't do it via an approved source, do it via an unapproved source if you have to. And if you can't do it via an unapproved source through your transponder because you're changing aircraft or you're renting or something, then do it via Sky Echo or some other means of doing ADS-B out. When it comes to every single electronic conspicuity device that I can think of will see ADS-B in, so that has to be the way to go. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. And now I'm going to ask you, if you can, to join the Flyer Club. Become a member of the Flyer Club. It costs you £7.50 a quarter. You get all of the Flyer content. You get the videos. You get the live stream on a Thursday night. You get the website that we put huge amounts of work into. You get the magazine. You get the 6 free landing fees in the magazines, which non-club members don't get access to. And frankly, we need your support to be able to continue to provide material and content like this. So that would be great. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the notification bell, and leave some comments in the description. Although, please, there are something like 70 pages of discussion over ADSB on the Flyer forum. So if you want to if you want to go to the uber geeky side of ADSB and Electronic Conspicuity and P3I and everything else, then best to do it on the forum rather than start yet another uber geeky thread on the YouTube comments. But hey, I can't stop you. Go for it if you want to. Thank you very much, and see you soon, but hopefully not that close in the skies. Cheers. Bye.